How's it going, guys? This is Nate, owner of NK Woodworks. I just thought I'd make a quick little video to kind of show off my shop setup and maybe give you all a little tour just so you can get an idea what I work in. So I guess the best place to start would be at the heart of the shop right here. I have my table saw. And this is a 1975 Rockwell Delta Unisaw cabinet saw. I actually got this saw for free. I used to work at a cabinet shop and my boss really liked me, so he gave me the saw for free. It did not come with this fence. It came with a pretty crappy stock fence that Delta put on their saws, and I didn't like it very much. So I tossed that and I got myself a Shop Fox T-square fence, and I absolutely love it. The only thing I didn't like was the cursor, so I replaced the cursor with one off of a Powermatic 66, and I absolutely love the cursor. It's much easier to read. Right now I got I believe it's an 80 tooth fine finishing blade in there, a Freud. Very nice, expensive blade, but it leaves some very nice cuts on sheet goods. Right here we have an Osborne miter gauge, EB3 miter gauge, and I absolutely love this thing. It's almost like a mini crosscut sled or a panel sled. You can cut pieces up to 36 inches, I think, long or something like that. And it's got a little stop block here, which is real nice, and you can set up your repeated cuts, and it's got a tape measure. So I do really like that very, very much. Here's one of the push sticks that I use. I just cut these out on the bandsaw, pretty standard. This is the style that I prefer. Some people like the real skinny ones that are on a stick. I don't really care for those that much. I also have a shout out to Fast Cap. I love their tape measures. I have several of these. They're very nice. Anyway, right here is the outfeed table / main workbench. It does have a little bit of junk on it at the end, and it has seen better days. It's very stained up and not very great looking, but you know, it gets the job done. I just need a place to extend my table saw out for big pieces, and also just to have for assembling projects like cabinets and so forth. So right next to the workbench, I have this joiner. It's an 8-inch Grizzly from the 80s. It's old, but it works very, very well. And oh, I forgot to mention the Delta Unisaw runs off a 220. It is a 3 horsepower single phase. This is a 2 horsepower 220 volt joiner single phase, and it works very, very well. It actually has an extended bed on it, a 72-inch bed, so you have a lot of room. It has 8-inch cut depth on it, or width on it, and it's very nice. I used to have a 6-inch joiner. I wasn't very happy with it. I just found that it was just too small for most of the projects I did, so I upgraded and got this 8-inch version, and it's served me very well. I think Grizzly's older tools were very well made. I think their new stuff's pretty well made too. Moving on, right next to the joiner, I have a thickness planer. And this is actually a Shopsmith professional planer. It's a 12-inch wide capacity by 4 inches tall. It runs very, very well. It didn't come with a motor when I bought it. It just came with the body, the planer body. So I installed this 1 3/4 horsepower induction motor with a belt drive. It used to have a link belt on it, but I took that off because it actually made a lot of noise with that. So I just put a nicer V-belt on, and it seems to work very, very well. One of the main reasons I like this planer, it's smaller. I don't really have the need for a larger planer than this. And all of the other planers in this size are typically the benchtop ones, and they are super, super loud because they have universal motors in them, and they are just incredibly loud. This is much quieter than those, so that's why I prefer this and why I bought this specifically. Another reason why I love this one is it has a variable speed feed motor on it. So a lot of planers, they have the feed rollers are driven by the motor, the main drive motor, but in this one it actually has a separate motor for that. And it's a little brush motor, and it actually has a variable speed dial here, and I absolutely love that because then I can just dial in the perfect speed, you know, if I'm working with a figured piece or something like that. Works very, very well. I should mention this is on 110. This is not 220. Moving on, I have my Resaw bandsaw. This is actually an older AMT. It has 12-inch depth of cut. I installed this fence on it. This actually used to come off of an old table saw, but I figured out a way to rig it up on this bandsaw, and it works very, very well. I love it because it's like a miniature Biesmeyer. It actually is a Delta, so it is basically a mini Biesmeyer fence. I also added a dust collection port because it did not have one, and it seems to work fairly well for what it is. Right now I have an Olsen 1/2-inch 3 TPI blade on it. If it'll focus, there we go. Very nice blade. I love Olsen blades. It's really the only brand that I use. It just slices through like butter. I used to have a 3/4-inch blade on it, but I found that it was just, for some reason, it was actually taking longer to cut than this blade. And I think it's just because of how wide it was straining the motor a little bit. So I ended up just putting this 1/2-inch blade on, and it works like butter. I absolutely love it. This I actually got for $50 on Facebook. One day I was on Facebook Marketplace, and I happened to come across this bad boy for $50. The guy said the blade kept popping off, and I guess the guy just didn't really know how to work on these machines, because I was able to get it running in just 20-30 minutes. It worked like butter. I got Olsen cool blocks on it. Works very well. What else can I say? Oh, the original owner, according to him, this came out of a school wood shop, and whoever had it before actually upgraded the tires, so it actually has urethane tires on it, which is very, very nice. Nice little neat upgrade that I didn't foresee. I'm trying to think of what else to say. Oh, it has a 2 horsepower. They call it 2 horsepower, but it runs on 110, so it's probably 1.5. But they call it 2 horsepower. It has a 2 horsepower induction motor in it. 1725 RPM. I do have a link belt on this one, and it runs very well with that. I should mention I do have a link belt on the joiner as well, and it runs very smooth. Next we have this Wen drill press. It's a 12-inch drill press, and it's one of the newer acquisitions in my shop. I actually really love this drill press. Before I was using a Central Machinery, Central Machinery Harbor Freight drill press, a 10-inch, which I still have. It's on the metalworking side of my shop now, but I wasn't very happy with it. It isn't very accurate. It wobbles too much for woodworking. For metalworking, it's fine for most stuff. The table's really small. I love that this one comes with this nice big melamine table, and it also comes with this nice fence, and it has some clamps and other jigs, and you can manufacture your own throat plates, which is very nice because you go through these very fast. What to say? This is actually a variable speed drill press. So it actually has this digital readout here, and when you flip the motor on, it actually tells you the current speed that you're running at. And if you look over on the side here, it actually has this lever here that you can adjust the speed with. So if you pull it towards you, it makes it go faster. And the top speed is about 2840 RPM, about what it hits. And at its lowest, about 460 RPMs. Another nice feature that it has is it has this nice LED light, which works very, very well because it is very dark in my shop. and I do love that. It also has a crosshair laser, which is very, very accurate, and I didn't have to adjust that out of the box. It works very, very well. I'm very pleased with that. All in all, a great drill press. It's definitely worth the money. I think I paid about $280 for it, but it's definitely worth the money. And it definitely has a lot more power than the old one I used to have. One thing I should mention, I upgraded this to also a link belt, and it runs very, very smooth. The original belts that it came with were they weren't great. They were just off-the-shelf Chinese belts, and they just didn't run very smooth, so I took those off. And now it runs much, much quieter. On the other side of this tool bench here, I have this little Delta. It's a 1-inch belt and a 5-inch disc sander. This guy I really don't use that much, mostly because it's just so small, and also because I have a much larger belt and disc sander over here. I'll show you in a minute. But one thing that this thing excels at is sharpening. I use this 1-inch strip and also the disc from time to time, but mostly this 1-inch strip sander. I use this bad boy for sharpening my chisels, my planer blades, my plane blades. It works very, very well. Anything that I need to sharpen, I almost always use this. I also have jigs that I made that are set at certain angles, or I can change the angle on so I can get the perfect angle. And I also have a bunch of grits I go through. But this works amazing for sharpening. It's kind of barbaric, I suppose, to some people, but it works very well and very fast, and I love it. Oh, before I forget, I do have some more fixtures on this drawer here. I have my Forstner bits, which are nice. They're Irwins. They're very, very nice. I have a jig which attaches to the drill press for mortising. And here's some of the clamps and stop blocks and other fixtures that come with the drill press. This is just a doweling jig. I kind of just threw that in there. I have brad point drill bits, straight drill bits in here also. And I also have these sanding drums. And normally these are meant for the drill press to use as a spindle sander. But I actually repurposed these sanding drums, which I'll get to here in a second. If we look underneath this cabinet here, I'll have to kind of dig it out. Here's a little shop vac. This right here is a homemade oscillating spindle sander that I built myself because I couldn't find one that I was very happy with, so I ended up just building my own. And the way it works is it has an induction motor that came off an old bandsaw mounted up in here, and I actually put a drill chuck in it from that old Harbor Freight drill press. I upgraded the chuck on it, so I took the old chuck, attached it to the shaft of the motor, and now if I take the key for the chuck and loosen the chuck, I'm able to fit those drill press sanding drums in the chuck, tighten them down, and I have a spindle sander. Now, it's not an oscillating spindle sander because it doesn't move up and down like a normal one, but it still works very well, and it didn't cost me any money, so I'm very happy. I also, you can't really see, you can't see it, but on this side I attached a dust collector port so I can hook this little shop vac that's in here up to it, and it works excuse me, very, very well. Very pleased with how that turned out. Here is just a shop vac that I just leave here for hooking up to router table or other machine and just for cleaning up. I also have this dust collector which is hooked up to the drum sander just so it's standalone. Speaking of dust collectors, this is my main dust collector right here. It's a Harbor Freight 2 horsepower unit. It used to have 2 bags on it, and I didn't like that because I hated to change the bags, so I got fed up with that, and I ended up just adding this trash can separator that I built, and it actually works very, very well. And I ended up mounting the motor on my wall to save on floor space, and that was a huge improvement. And then I added this elbow and this filter for the fine dust to pass through. Initially I was going to run it outside, but I ended up just running it through this filter. And this filter I actually got for free from the same cabinet shop that I got the cabinet saw from. They were throwing this out, and this actually belonged to the CNC machine that we had. It was an air filter, so they were throwing it out because it got a little wet. I ended up cleaning it out. Works very well at trapping the fine dust, and it works super well in this situation. I also have all my attachments hanging up on the wall for it, as well as the hose. The hose is nice because I can just click it off the wall, hook it up to the bandsaw. I can hook it up to the thickness planer, the joiner, the table saw, any of these tools right here. It's very, very nice, and that just snaps back into place. I also have this big floor sweep attachment for when I need to suck up the floor. That works very, very well also. Here's the back workbench. This is mostly just a collection of junk. This is where I keep all my hand tools in this little toolbox for the time. I have wooden mallets and hammers and rubber mallets and so forth, double-sided mallets, pry bars, things of that nature. Also have, this is just an assortment of miscellaneous junk like putty knives, edge band trimmer, compass, nail punches, nail sets, scratch awl. There's some nail cutters in there. I also have these cabinet scrapers, which I absolutely love. Needle nose pliers, you know, basic things. More nail pullers. This is a scraper. This is one of my favorite little tools here. It's this little Cobalt miniature thumb plane. I absolutely love it, especially for flush trimming. I could just graze it over and it works very well. I love it. Also have, shout out to Milwaukee, a fastback utility knife. Very quick, very fast. I love it. All right, moving on. Oh, I also have this Lennox screwdriver, which I use a lot. I also love that. And I also have these silicone glue brushes, which I love very much for spreading glue around, not getting my fingers messy. Also have this little pry bar nail puller, works very well. Here I just keep some old beater chisels. Chisels that I don't really care that much about, and they just get used for kind of junk work. This is where I keep some of my smaller hand saws, like this little Cobalt flush cut saw. I love this saw very much, very nice. Also have this guy, another flush cut saw. This is kind of a sort of Japanese style one, also very nice. And I also have this Dozuki Japanese hand saw, tenon saw. Very well for cutting tenons and mortise joints. It's very nice. I also have a coping saw in here. It's a mess in here. I'm still trying to organize. Anyhow, this is where I keep my squares. I have a Milwaukee 4-inch trim square, very nice. I also have this old tri-square, which belonged to my grandfather. I restored. And here's a newer Empire one that I use more often. Very nice. Got it at Home Depot. A little spirit level steel rule in here. A little marking gauge, vintage Stanley. Just some speed squares, a little mini combo square. There's a full-size square in here, combo square. There's also this architect's rule as well. Very nice. Makita. Makita is my main battery platform out here, as also Bosch 12 volt as well, but mostly Makita. So in my Makita lineup, I have the 36 volt rear handle saw, brushless saw. I have the jigsaw, the brush jigsaw. I have the dual charger. I have the single charger. I also have another charger in my house, which is not out here at the moment. I have the trim router, which I use all the time. I have this hammer drill, brushless hammer drill, and brushless impact, which I also love very much. I also have this brushless drywall screw gun, self-loading. I don't do that kind of work that much anymore, but it is handy to have. Bosch 12 volt. I got into this fairly recently. I do love their 12 volt stuff. It's very small, it's very light, and it's powerful for what it is for the most part. I have this big 6 amp hour battery here, which I mostly run in this brushless sander. I love this sander, it works very well. I also have the oscillating multi-tool and the little reciprocating saw. This guy has basically no power, but it is nice for small things and getting into tight spaces. I also have the flashlight, which works very well. It has a magnet on it and also a hook so you can hang it. Very nice. Hand saws. I have this Japanese pool saw that I love very much. I use it all the time. It's my favorite handsaw that I own. It's just a cheap Harbor Freight, but it's actually very sharp and it works very, very well. I also have this tenon saw right here, which I very rarely use because if I need to do any handsaw work, I typically grab this guy or one of my smaller ones. Bandsaw blades that I have coiled up, a draw knife, an 8-inch DR Barton draw knife. Very, very nice, very sharp. I sharpened it myself with that strip sander, and it cuts like butter. I absolutely love it. Just an old Craftsman Spirit level there, 2-foot level. I also have this big boy no-name chisel. It's made in Germany. I do not know the name, but it is huge. It is a 2-inch chisel, and it will hog out material like nobody's business. I absolutely love it. Comes in handy for those odd jobs. Here's my miter box. It's a Hercules 12-inch compound sliding miter box. I actually got this one at Harbor Freight on a deal. It's initially about a $500 or $600 saw, but I was walking in Harbor Freight one day and I was going to get one of the cheaper models when one of the guys that worked there told me that they had this model in a box that had some damage done to it. And they said that they would give me this saw for the price of the saw I was about to buy. And the saw I was about to buy was about $120. So I walked out with this brand new saw. The only problem with it was the box was damaged. The saw itself was unscathed and it's in brand new shape. Or it was anyways. But I got this puppy for $120. I'm very happy. It's basically identical to the DeWalt. They're made in the same factory. They're basically the exact same saw, different color. It has the nice light on it so you can see exactly where your blade's going to go. Very nice. Also comes with a very nice blade, which you can't say about most saw blades that come with saws these days. That miter box is hooked up to this little shop vac that I got just because to have something to suck up some of the dust. It really doesn't do that good of a job. I might address that at some other point, but for now it is what it is. Little bench brush. Here's some edge banding. Very nice for cabinetry and so forth. I keep a stockpile of that, different grains and different wood species. This is just where I hang up my earmuffs, my safety mask, my safety glasses, so forth, just so I can get to them quickly. This guy, a DeWalt radial arm saw. You don't see radial arm saws that much anymore. This guy I actually got for free on Facebook. A couple didn't want it anymore. They didn't need it. It was given to them by somebody in their family, and they didn't want to use it, so they ended up giving it to me. I actually have a wobble dado on there. It's not a stacked dado, unfortunately. I do have a stacked dado, which is right back there. But I usually use that solely in the table saw because it's just easier. But I love having this radial arm saw set up with a dado because then I can make all my crosscuts and make dados in them without having to set up the table saw and break out the dado stack and go through shims and all this and that. This is much easier and quicker than that. So I leave this permanently set up for now as a dado saw. I also have my dust collection shroud that I built for it back here. Just some 10-inch register box from Home Depot. Works very well. And that's the dust collector that powers it. Just some accessories for the radial saw, extra saw blades, arbor nuts, so forth. These are table saw blades and also some miter box blades behind it. This is right here in the front is a very expensive Freud blade, glue line rip blade, 24 tooth. I absolutely love it. It's one of my favorite saw blades that I own. That's the blade I use most often in my unisaw. Very rarely do I break out the 80 tooth or the 60 tooth blades. That's usually only for sheet goods. But for the most part, I rip a lot of hardwood, and this blade excels at that. Also have some extra throat plates here. Dado stack, as I mentioned before. Let's see. Here you go, central machinery. Belt and disc sander. I believe it's a 9-inch disc. And yes, 9-inch disc and 6-inch belt sander. and it works very well. This I got on a floor sale for, I think I walked out the door, it was like 170 bucks, and I also used my coupon for it. Works very well. I've had it for a while. I absolutely love it. It's very handy. It is also very nice for when you want to tip the bed up and sand vertically. I don't do that much, but when you need it, it comes in handy. I just have a bunch of assorted grits for it in belts and discs, and the cheap miter gauge that comes with it. I don't use this, but I just held on to it, and a eraser sponge for cleaning. Also down here, I should mention, I have this old Sears Craftsman scroll saw, direct drive scroll saw. It's a 16-inch, and it works very well. It's very noisy. And I don't use a scroll saw a whole lot because I mostly just use a bandsaw for that type of work. But when you need to make those super intricate tight cuts, this comes in handy. So I picked this up for I think 50 bucks, something like that, 60 bucks. Up above we have a Bosch RA1171 router table. I absolutely love it. It is very nice. Right now I have a Milwaukee router installed in it, and it's a 2-horse router, just a fixed base, and I love it. A very nice router. It's not variable speed, unfortunately, but I do have a router speed controller that I use for that. Here's the fence for it. I don't use the fence a ton. I mostly just use bearing bits in this guy for quick roundovers, but I do use the fence for other applications. Over here, this is one of the newer acquisitions as well. It's an old Performax 1632 Plus drum sander. I love this drum sander. It's very nice. I used to have a Delta drum sander, 1836, and it was absolutely horrible. The bed had plastic gears on it that kept stripping out. It was horrible. I had to constantly repair it, and I repaired it more than I used it, which was horrible. So I ended up just selling that, and I got myself this nice Performax, and it was worth every penny. It also comes with the optional extension beds, which was a nice little bonus. And that's run off of this dust collector, this Harbor Freight dust collector, because the big boy won't reach this far, unfortunately. So I just have a separate dust collector running on this. Let's see. Oh, I also have my curve cutting bandsaw for where I cut my curves. Right now it does not have a blade on it. I am in the process of having one delivered because my other one went dull. So I'm waiting for it to ship, but this is a nice rigid bandsaw. I actually upgraded the motor on it because the motor it came with was very weak. It was only a 3/4 horse. This one is a 1 3/4 horse, 110 volt motor, much more powerful, and it tackles jobs with ease. I absolutely love it. Here's my clamp rack, sort of makeshift clamp rack. I have all my bar clamps and pipe clamps over here, a whole bunch of C-clamps. I have my vice grip clamps. I normally have a bunch more spring clamps over here, but they are moved at the moment for other uses. I have a bunch of these Irwin quick grips. They're not super strong, but they're very handy when you need a second hand. Also, I have a bunch of these bar clamps. I have Harbor Freight and Jorgensen, and they are very nice. They work very well. Trying to think what else I can show. I could show my wood pile. This is my lumber. It's kind of a mess. I don't really have a lumber rack at the moment. This is just kind of my current setup for now. It works. So going through, right here is the sapele. I also have some teak back there, which I'm not going to dig out. Next to the sapele, I have mahogany. This is African mahogany. And a lot of this came from the old cabinet shop that I worked at. It was given to me. Right here I have white oak, a lot of white oak. I have some bigger slabs in the back, some 3-inch and 4-inch pieces back there. And also some red oak. Right here is some red oak buried in the back there too. Next to that, I have black walnut. I have a lot of black walnut, and I use it a lot, so I have a lot of that. Here's my hard maple. Oh, before I forget, there is cherry. I have that cherry slab right there, and I also have some cherry boards buried in there too. Here's my hard maple. I have a lot of hard maple. That's another wood that I use a lot. Various lengths, various pieces I can use. I have a lot of slabs that I got from a guy that I used to work for. Gave me a bunch of cut off slabs, so I have some slabs I can make tables and all sorts of furniture pieces with, and it's very nice. Let's see, I guess I could show off my power tools. Not very interesting, but here I just have some sanders, skill saws. Up there's an electric planer. Let's see what else we have. Here's where I keep my sandpaper with different grits marked in little drawers, extra drill bits, screw bits, Kreg jig, Kreg clamps, Kreg screws, as well as miscellaneous drill bits, screws, nails, router accessories such as wrenches. Up here I keep sandpaper for my drum sander, some cling wrap, just some different miscellaneous objects, you could say. Oh, I didn't even show off my hand planes. So I have a assortment of vintage Stanley planes. I have the big number 5 here. I have this number 4 here, which is actually rebadged as a Craftsman. I have the number 3. I also have this block plane and this mini Stanley block plane. And I also have a drywall rasp. In here, I have some high-quality Japanese chisels that I got from a company out of Japan called Emoticum. And it's a very nice set of chisels. I love it. It was an expensive set, but it was worth every penny. It comes with a sharpening stone and a jig for sharpening. Very, very nice. This is just another scraper for scraping off varnish or paint. Here's my digital caliper. So they're a general digital caliper. Very, very nice. I think you can get them at Lowe's, but they work very, very well. Routers. I have a lot of routers, which are not going to be very easy to get to because of some stuff in the way here. But here I keep my routers. I have a lot of them, a lot of DeWalt routers, plunge routers, scale router up there, a ton of bits, some jigs. I have a little porter cable trim router in here, and some other various routers. I have a lot of routers because it's a tool that is invaluable in my shop that I use a lot. And so I guess that's basically it for now. This is a little tour of my small shop setup. It's nothing spectacular, but I make do with it, and it is what it is, and it's what I have to work with. I also have my stereo set up here for my tunes, and I also have my finishes and stains and glues and things of that nature over here, and just various shop items, oils, lubricants, acetone, paint thinner type things. But anyhow, I hope you guys kind of enjoyed this tour. I'm sorry it was a very long video, but I just thought I would show off what I work in. A little tour of my shop. So I hope you guys enjoy, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.